that I can post this, that people who can't during class can watch this. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I lost some parts of part 1.
Okay. So on yesterday's page, so if you click on Monday, I posted like a recording of this. So you can go back through and skip through it and find the slides that you need to find. And it's like, it's literally all of this. So you can hear me talking too. Okay. Maddox, do you have a question?
Yeah, I don't know if it was supposed to be like this or what, but while you were talking, I went to go download the Part 2 notes PDF to Knowability.
Uh-huh.
And it said, it just showed an all-white screen, and in the top, left corner, it said unauthorized.
Well, okay, give me 1 second. Can anybody, okay, so let's get that figured out before we start. Can everybody go to the page for today and try to download on number 4, it says the Agriculture and Farm Part 2, and let me know if you're having that same problem, if it won't let you download it.
I have the same problem.
Okay, give me 1 minute and I will try to get a new one and I'll send it out to you. So yesterday we started the part 1 notes, and that's what we'll continue with those because we didn't finish those, right? But at the bottom of those part 1 notes, let me get that pulled up while I'm working on this. On the bottom of the part 1 notes, there's like a section for vocabulary. So if you scroll down on the last page, it has vocabulary. So those are some words that we'll figure out too as we go through. Did everybody get number 10 written down yesterday, the part that said copy this? I'm trying to pull it up right now.
The recording doesn't work.
From yesterday, the recording doesn't work?
Yeah, it didn't work.
Oh boy, okay. Okay, give me a minute and let me try to get the part 2 notes figured out. And then I'll work on the recording. I'll probably have to do that later today. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and screen share this. Okay, so this was number 10. So make sure you have all of this written down while I figure out the part 2 notes really quick. almost done. Just give me like 30 seconds. um, okay, somebody try like reloading and refreshing your page and try it again with the agriculture and farming notes.
It will let me get to download it.
Yeah, so what you need to do is like exit out of today's page, so go back to the home page and then try again. So if you go back home and then period and then click on it, is it letting you now?
It's working.
I
for
could
me.
before.
You couldn't before, but I'm saying I just switched it. I fixed it, I think. So you'll have to go back to your home page and then go back to today's period and then it should work.
It's working for me.
It's working? Okay. So can anybody not get the part 2 ones downloaded? Okay.
I couldn't.
I know you couldn't before, but can you not now? If you go back home and then click on today.
Let me try real quick. Hold on.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Oh, it was up from earlier.
Okay. Nevaeh, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you go back to 9? I think I missed it.
Number 9 was, we just talked about it yesterday, so it doesn't have the answer on here. So yes, the answer was just like foraging is having to go hunt for things or gather things. Farming, you stay in one spot. So foraging is nomadic, farming is sedentary. Any differences between the two will work. Okay. So can we all get to the notes for part 2 now? Stella?
It brings me to Safari, and then it says unauthorized. You do not have the like requirements to look at this PDF or whatever.
Okay. And you went back to the home page before you did it?
Yeah, I refreshed it twice.
Okay. Is anybody else still having that problem for the part 2 notes?
No.
It shouldn't even take you to Safari now. It should just download a PDF now.
I'm having that problem.
Okay. You might try like exiting off your canvas and logging back in. Because if some people can pull it up, then it means that it should be working. It might just be that your canvas hasn't reloaded it yet. Nevaeh, do you still have a question?
No, it's up from last time.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started with finishing the part 1 notes. And if we're still having problems with the part 2, then we will come back to that. So, we went over this yesterday. An agricultural civilization is a large human society that relies on farming to produce enough food to survive. Farming and agriculture is necessary to support large populations of people. So, like we talked about yesterday, there are 7 billion people in the world. So agriculture is completely necessary for us to be able to live at this point. Farming is the domestication of plants and animals to help humans survive. We talked about that too. Domestication, we're modifying or changing plants and animals for human use to make life easier for humans, right? So here are some examples of domestication. So this is what wild wheat looks like. Like if you just went out and you found wheat growing wildly, but this is what domesticated wheat looks like. And this is what it looks like when farmers grow it, because they have picked specific strains that are better than others. So the wheat grows exactly how they want it to, and it grows bigger. Like you can see this here is a lot bigger than the little ones over here, right? So you're going to get more product out of this. You're going to be able to sell more and feed more people with it. So that's what domesticated wheat looks like. The same with corn. He showed what wild corn used to look like in the video that was on this yesterday. So this is our wild corn over here. It looks absolutely nothing like this domesticated corn, does it? But this domesticated corn is better. It's easier for humans to consume. It tastes better. It has a lot of different purposes. You can use it for things other than food. But so humans have changed corn so that it's bigger. You can eat more of it. It tastes better. So that's another example of it. In terms of like animals, he talked about the sheep in the video, right? So domesticated sheep descend from mountain goats. So these are like mountain goats over here. So how they have, they're much more like muscly looking, don't you think? Like these animals look more like muscle and less fat, whereas these sheep over here are much more fatty, and they also have a lot more wool. You don't see any wool in these at all, hardly. So the domesticated sheep have a lot more wool because we use the wool for materials, for clothing, for yarn, anything at all. We can use wool for a lot of things. And so over time, they have bred specific sheep to make the offspring, the baby sheep, come out the way that they'd like to. So whether it be more fatty or have more wool, whatever that may be, that is how they have domesticated that animal over time. How did farming affect plants and animals? So somebody tell me how people have used domestication to change plants and animals. Think about it for a second, and then I want you guys to tell me some examples that you can think of. So think about it for a second. When you have an idea, raise your little hand up, and we'll go around and say a few, okay? Okay, who has some examples? We need more than one person. Nadia, what's your example?
For plants, they are bigger and come in more quantities.
Yes.
And for animals, they're more fatter and they have less muscle.
Yeah, that's true. Any other examples that we can think of? We talked about a couple over the past couple of days. We talked about like horses being used for human use. Those were really good examples, Nadia. Okay. Number 11. So describe the results of domestication for plants, animals, and humans. So with plants, they can grow faster, they can grow more, so higher quantities. They grow larger, so faster, higher quantities, larger. Animals, so the results of domestication for animals include what? Who can tell me? So for animals, we can breed animals so that you get stronger offspring. Stronger offspring can be used in farming, or you can get fatter offspring so that there is good meat to eat for humans. And for humans, we're able to grow more and better crops and raise animals. And this is better for sustaining life, which helps population growth, anything like that. So again, for plants, you could say, sorry, I started to like choke on air. For plants, you could say they grow big, they grow quicker, and they grow faster. So for animals, you can say, you know, they're used for human use, so they're bred to be stronger, to be used in farming, or fatter so that they can be eaten. And for humans, we are able to grow more and better crops and raise animals, and that is better for sustaining life and population growth. Okay, I don't know if this one's gonna work. All right, so there's a video to watch with this one again. So we're gonna put on your part 1 notes underneath that little chart that said plants, animals, and humans. There's a section that says directions. Watch the video and put each box in the correct order by writing a number next to it. So you're gonna write 1 through 6 by one of the boxes, and we're gonna put them in order of how they kind of occur. Does that make sense to everybody? Do we have any questions? If you have a question, I can't see your little hand right now, so just go ahead and ask it if you have a question.
So, was that box like on part 1 or part 2 notes?
Part 1. We're still on part 1 notes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, here we go. Let's start the video.
We can't hear it.
You can't hear it? Okay,
No.
give me 1 second. That's an easy fix. I know how to do that one. Can you hear now?
Yes.
So why, after almost 200,000... So why, after almost 200,000 years of living as foragers, did humans in so many parts of the world that had no connection between each other begin to behave in such similar ways in such a brief period of time? Well, there seem to be two main reasons. One factor is overpopulation, the other is climate change. And these factors operated in many different parts of the world. Let's take overpopulation first. During the Paleolithic era, if populations grew too much, you could generally solve by migrating into a new region. But after the settlement of the Americas from about 15,000 years ago, there were no large areas left to migrate into. So from now on, if populations began to grow, you had to try to get more resources from a given area. In other words, you had to farm. Now, that's the first factor. The second, climate change, is subtler. Most of the Paleolithic era was dominated by the ice ages. And during the ice ages, for the most part, climates were so cold and so unpredictable that farming was more or less impossible. Then, from about 18,000 years ago, global climates began to change. They began to get warmer. Glaciers began to retreat, sea levels began to rise, and in area after area, you began to get warmer and wetter climates. There was a brief period between 13,000 and 12,000 years ago when climates were cold again, but then from about 12,000 years ago, climates became warmer and wetter, and we entered the interglacial period that we're still living in today. Now, as a result of global climate change, humans and animals and plants everywhere in the world had to start changing their behaviors. In some areas, such as the Fertile Crescent east of the Mediterranean, as climates changed, resources became more abundant. There were more plants and more animals. And in these regions, these particularly favored regions, some foragers began to settle down because they found they could live in one place for most of the year without traveling around. And they began to form villages. They became sedentary. In the Fertile Crescent, archaeologists refer to the people who settled in these villages as Natufians, and they've excavated many of their villages. But as they settled down, their behaviors changed, and in particular, populations began to grow. We're not sure why, but one reason may be that if you're a villager, you don't have to carry children around, so there's less pressure to reduce the number of children. In any case, populations grew, and that posed a problem. Within a few generations, they found they didn't have enough resources to feed everyone in what had once seemed an area of abundance. So what are they to do? Well, perhaps they could go back to foraging. The problem was they'd probably forgotten many of the old techniques of foraging, and besides, neighbors probably occupied those lands now. So what can they do? Well, they can start tending their crops and animals more carefully. They can start providing the plants they like with extra water. They can start clearing away weeds. They can start penning particular animals in enclosures. In fact, they can start farming. Now, something like what happened to the Natufians seems to have happened in many other areas. In the case of the Natufians, we have lots of evidence about this expansion of villages and population growth. But something like this happened in many areas, and everywhere the same two factors seem to have been involved. First, global climate change, which made agriculture possible, and secondly, overpopulation, which made it necessary. Agriculture is our seventh major threshold of increasing complexity. As we've seen, these are pivotal events that allow the creation of new, more complex things with new emergent properties. Agriculture is not just a matter of tastier fruit or fatter cows. Agriculture unlocked forces much more powerful than that, and they would transform human history. How and why?
Okay. So did everybody get this order over here written down? These are the order they should be in, 1 through 6. Make sure you get those written down. Okay, so do you guys still see the PowerPoint right now? No, you don't, do you?
No.
Mm-mm.
No.
That was weird. Okay, so this has a bunch of the terms for that little vocab section at the end. So this is kind of like a cycle of showing you how farming and population changes and how it begins, and we're going to go through this. So step 1 is that foraging stops. So originally humans lived on Earth were foragers, people who moved around and hunted and gathered food and resources. But then, as he talked about in the video, you had population problems. So you have overpopulation. People couldn't move to new places when resources ran out because other people had already lived there. So resources were running out everywhere, not just in your spot that you had been, but everywhere. So you couldn't move to a new spot because that one would be out of resources too. So overpopulation is number 1. Too many people on Earth, not enough resources. It's overpopulation. That's number 1. Climate change. Luckily, the climate warmed up and plants and animals were everywhere. So at this point in time, it was a much cooler climate overall. And so climate change helps at this point in time because it warms up, and so plants and animals were able to thrive. So a change in the long-term weather for a region over a long period of time is climate change. A surplus of resources, number 3, is abundant resources. People could finally stop moving around all the time and find all the food in one place. So that's farming. When you stay in one place and grow your food there, that's farming. An increase in the amount of people on Earth is population growth. Population growth. Or population increase. So it says then population increases. There are more people to feed, clothe, and protect. So population growth or population increase. And that causes resource shortages. The environment doesn't produce enough to meet the needs of the people. That's resource shortages. Not enough resources to support the number of people on Earth is resource shortages. And this leads to new inventions and innovations. So people living in villages and towns use the power of collective learning to create solutions to help feed, clothe, and protect everyone. So collective learning is one of our vocab words, right? What does collective learning mean? What does collective learning mean? Maria?
Isn't it like to pass down the information that you know to another generation?
Yep, to pass down information generation to generation. So, So number 5 was, you could put like new farming techniques or new inventions and innovations. Basically, it's the things from the section right above. So you could put new farming techniques. And this creates a temporary abundance. And so these new inventions and innovations create short periods of success and plenty. And this just becomes like a cycle. So we just keep moving in that cycle. So
What was 1 and 2?
1 was overpopulation. So they're the ones over here to the left in the forage and stopping column. Overpopulation and climate change. So do we see how it's kind of like a chart, like listing out the steps in order? So far we're in step 1, and all these things happen in step 1. And then in step 2, that's where farming starts. And this is the cycle of how farming starts. This section in the middle is all of those different inventions and innovations that they're talking about. So with farming, we talked about, you know, there are new farming techniques, but those techniques include domestication, draft power, irrigation. Irrigation's one of our vocab words too, right? So all of those things are part of the new farming techniques. Having a surplus, that way they can feed more people than just their families. And so then we go into step 3. So because we have farming or agriculture, that's when we go into step 3, and that's agricultural civilizations. That's where we'll stop for today. We'll start that tomorrow. So we didn't even get to your step part 2 notes, so that's okay. So we'll start part 2 notes tomorrow. So we'll start part 2, and we'll start with this step 3. Any questions? Sorry, I didn't realize time was up already. Okay, if you don't have any questions, that's it. Have a nice rest of your day. Your grades are finally, like, they should be completely updated right now. So there is an exit ticket today. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh.